chilling, most disturbing trucker encounter on Great Salt Lake Highway. It exists only because we agree to believe in it. I've always loved that part of I-80 for the way it makes even an 80,000-pound rig seem small. On nights like this, small can start to feel like disposable. Dispatch had me on a straight shot to Reno. The usual southern route had turned to trouble, rock slides, some pileup, so I took the lake. I'd fueled at a truck stop in Lake Point that looked like a spaceship. Chrome, neon, and a lot of empty booths wiped cleaner than a conscience. The waitress poured me coffee that tasted like burnt secrets. "Storm coming," she said, nodding toward the windows. The glass was dark and reflective and made it look like the diner itself was floating on the night. "Forecast says clear," I told her. She lifted one shoulder. "Lake makes its own rules." I left a 10 on the counter, stepped back into the cold, and set the rig moving. A dry chemical smell rode the air, salt and something lodged beneath it, like fish left too long in a closed freezer. The highway slid straight into the salt flats, where the night amplified sounds in strange ways. The chatter of brine flies in summer turns to winter's brittle hiss as grains of salt skitter across asphalt. The rhythmic slap of my wipers, even though the windshield was dry, the soft, no place to put it hum coming off the lake. I tuned the CB to 19 out of habit. At that hour, you usually get a few insomniacs telling lies large enough to keep them awake, but the channel was quiet, too quiet. I thumbed the mic anyway. "Breaker 19, westbound on the 80 past the lake. Anybody got eyes on road conditions?" Static, then faintly, keep to the white, keep to the white." I frowned. "Come again?" Silence, the kind of silence that isn't empty so much as it's listening. I chalked it up to somebody's bored idea of a joke and focused on the lane lines. They gleamed like wet bone under my headlights. The night did a trick of depth out here. My beams hit the reflective salt just right and made it look like I was driving across a flooded mirror. Far off to the north, the lake became not water, not land, but something third. An edge you can walk on until it gives way. A sign flashed by, "Great Salt Lake State Park, 2 miles. Another boasted Bonneville Salt Flats, 60. Then the world narrowed to my lane, my breath, and the click whisper of my turn signal as I eased around a weaving rental with California plates. The driver's face, pale in my window, had that lost look people wear when they leave cities and remember distances exist. The CB crackled back to life. "You westbound with the blue Pete and the eagle sticker?" A man's voice, smoky. Not old so much as used. He sounded close, in the way voices can when there's too much space around you. "That's me," I said. I glanced at the hood ornament catching light and shadow. "You got a handle, friend?" "Folks call me Red." A pause, long enough to notice the faintest tremor under his words. "You ought not be out tonight." "Forecast is clear," I said again, but I said it like you say a prayer to check if anyone's listening. "Lake don't care what men forecast," Red said. "You keep to the white and you don't stop for shadows. Hear?" Before I could dig into that, my headlights skated across a shape at the shoulder. A rig, jackknifed. But as I drew even, the trailer was straight, and the cab, if you could call it that, looked wrong. A Kenworth, old, 60s maybe, paint blistered off in strips. The chrome had been scoured to a dull gray by salt. The side mirror dangled by a wire like a dead eye on a nerve. And the door had an emblem, a stylized gull with its wings up, ringed by white crystals, letters I couldn't read under the crust. No driver, no hazard lights blinking, just that strange sensation of a crouched thing at the edge of sight. "Red," I said into the mic. "You on the shoulder by mile marker 48. Static, then keep to the white." I rolled past and checked my mirrors. The Kenworth's grill caught my taillights and threw back a red grin, and then it was swallowed by the dark. Calm breaths, wheels steady. That's trucker math out here. Speed plus weight plus focus equals survival. The flats greeted me with open desert, sky low and soundless as a held breath. I was thinking about the waitress's shrug when the first patch of fog rose off the lake and dragged its belly across the freeway. It wasn't cloud fog. It didn't smear the light like damp gauze. It reflected it. My beams hit the mist and came back at me shimmering, 1,000 little mirrors. Where it passed, the air tasted metallic and drier than bone. My nostrils cracked inside. On the CB, fog is hunger tonight. Keep to the white, keep to the white. I eased off the throttle. "Red, where are you?" "Closer than I ought to be." I don't scare easy. It's not the job for people who do. You drive long enough and you learn that the road has moods. You read them as carefully as you read the gauges. But that fog made the world feel tilted. Shapes moved under it. Not shadows cast by my lights, but blotches that slid against the wind. At first I thought they were flocks of birds, but they stayed too low and too slow, hugging the surface. The salt hiss became words, nothing human, just the suggestion of syllables in the dry run of crystals over road. Copy, I said. I'll hug the line. Good, and if you see him, don't look at his eyes. Who? I asked, but my voice came out thin. I topped a slight rise, the kind so subtle your stomach notices before your brain. The freeway ahead went glassy, a sheen, as if something slick had been poured across both lanes and left to set. I'd driven that stretch a dozen times and never seen water sit on it like that. No rain, no snow, just an unbroken pane catching starlight in a billion pinpricks. I tightened my grip. I know better than to brake on a surface I don't trust. I tapped the Jake, felt the engine murmur a hymn under me, and the speed bled off. On the right, just beyond the shoulder, the salt glowed. Not white, not really, but all colors at once if you stared long enough. Then I saw the truck. It wasn't the Kenworth. This one was newer, but not by much. A faded green Peterbilt pulling a tanker that wore the lake on its skin. White incrustations that looked like frost knuckled around the rims and ladder. It sat dead center in my lane with no hazards, a lantern swinging from the passenger mirror like something from a mine shaft. The lantern was wrong, a yellow flame that didn't flicker. It pulsed slow like a heartbeat. Red, I said, you got equipment on the road? No, he whispered, and then quietly, as if he spoke through clenched teeth, don't stop. I had 20 tons of reasons to stop. I had 15 more tons of reasons to miss. I laid on the air horn and watched the lantern's steady pulse. The cab's windshield was opaque with salt. The tanker's placard was blank. No hazmat numbers. Nothing. My high beams washed over the grill and came back dull, as if the truck ate light. At 10 yards, the lantern swung out. Swing is too gentle a word. It whipped across the lane on a chain, arcing toward my cab. I hauled left, tires singing. The lantern hit my passenger side mirror, and the sound it made wasn't glass. It was like a tongue on ice. A sticky, pulling pop. The wheel tugged hard as if the road had reached up and taken a lick. I cleared the tanker with inches to spare, trailer dancing. The wind caught the fog and dragged a sheet of it across my hood. For a second I had the sensation that the night wore a veil, and I'd been permitted to press my face against it. Almost had you, Red said. You trying to run me off the road? I snapped. My voice had climbed in pitch without permission. Not me, he said. Him. Who the hell is him? Red didn't answer. The channel filled with a low hiss, like the lake had put its mouth to the mic. Words rose inside it in pieces. The syllable of a name, the cardioid thump of something with weight moving across a hollow space. I glanced in the mirror at the place where my passenger side mirror should have been. No glass, no dangling arm, smooth, like the salt had never let it exist. Okay, I said to nobody. Okay. I set the cruise back. The fog held its distance for a few miles, drifting, hurting, making fences out of air. Then the CB clicked again. A different voice this time, dry, cracked, like someone who hadn't had water in a very long time. You lost. I lifted the mic. Negative. You lost, the voice repeated. Neither question nor statement, but a kind of diagnosis. We can take you where you're going. Keep to the white. Why do you people keep saying that? Silence. Then a laugh, but it broke on its own dryness. Because he keeps to the black. The headlights picked up something on the shoulder. Not a truck this time. Markers. Sticks jammed into the salt topped by strips of reflective tape. Impromptu guideposts someone had planted just off the asphalt. They ran parallel to the highway, at first random, then gradually spaced with intention. Oddly comforting, and also not. Little ribs on the world's big spine. To the south, out on the flats, shapes paced me. The kind of shapes you see if you stare at noise too long. Not people. Not anything with parts I could name. The fog bunched around them like a cloak, and sometimes the cloak flared like gills. I could measure their speed by the way they kept up with me. 55, 60. They weren't running. Running is messy. They slid. Red, I said very softly. You said don't look at his eyes. I did. Am I about to see him? I hope not. The freeway curved, one of the few curves out there, and my headlights smeared across a sign stenciled with salt. Wendover 89. I'd made less progress than I'd thought. Time had this trick it played near the lake. It went on break and didn't tell anyone. Something thumped the underside of my trailer. Once, twice. As if a long, flexible thing had swung up out of the fog and kissed the metal. The rig shuddered. I checked the mirrors again and caught something moving between my rear wheels and the asphalt. A shimmer, like heat, even though the night bit through my jacket. The shimmer bulged, pressed at the tires, then flattened, like a manta ray splits water when it rolls. I've never prayed much. But I reached under the dash for the St. Christopher medal I keep on a bit of chain. It isn't even mine. It came with the truck when I bought it back from a repo yard in Indiana, stuck to the underside of the ashtray with gummy tape. I rubbed it with my thumb until the metal warmed. On the CB, exit's coming up, Red said. Take the frontage, it'll keep you higher. Red, you leading me or leading me astray? He sighed, and the sigh was a long one. We all lead where we can. The frontage road was a pale seam parallel to the interstate, usually the last refuge of broken vehicles and bored teenagers. Tonight, it was a raised stitch. I signaled, eased across, and took the ramp. The fog surged in response, as if annoyed by my choice, and folded over the interstate where I'd been. In my mirror, the freeway disappeared beneath a moving field of white. The frontage had no lines, just the bleached dirt and the crunchy whisper of salt under tires. I braked gently, letting a little more distance settle between me and the emptiness ahead. That was when a set of headlights flared far behind me on the interstate, bright and fast, someone with either nerve or ignorance tearing west. The beams hit the fog and didn't slow. The truck plunged forward like a thrown stone, swallowed by the white. It wasn't the light I noticed most. It was the way the fog swelled, as if it took a breath, held it, and laughed to itself. Red, I said. Why all the trucks on the shoulder? Why the lantern? Why the markers? His answer came in fragments, as if from far away. 43, storm, went off, weight was wrong, pulled us, wrong lines, and then more clearly, he likes the busy nights. Who is he? I asked, but I already understood. Not who, what, the lake, not the water, not the place on a map, the thing made by the fact of it. The collective hunger of a shallow sea that has spent centuries receding and will not be told no tonight. It keeps to the black, I thought, and understood the meaning. My asphalt was its hunting seam. Why talk on the radio? I asked. Why tell me anything at all? When you were close, Red said. You crossed his breath. He sees through you for a moment. A pause. Lets us use it like a window. Us, hiss. Then, those he keeps. I took my foot off the accelerator. The truck coasted. My throat dried into paper. If he keeps you, how are you talking? We don't stop, Red said, so quietly I almost didn't catch it. We drive in place. That's what he likes. Wheels still, engines on. He has a sound. If we ever stop hearing it, we stop being. His voice hitched, and then we salt down. The shapes on the flats drew closer, not by moving, by allowing the world to come to them. My eyes watered. A salt taste gathered at the back of my tongue, and I swallowed hard. The frontage road rose, then fell in a shallow dip. The dip felt wrong, like a mouth. I saw him then. At first I mistook him for another dead rig on the shoulder, but the black of him wasn't metal, it was absorption. My lights went into it and didn't return. A tall silhouette in the road ahead, a man only in the way a scarecrow is a man. He wore a coat that had never been cloth, a hat that was the memory of hats, and when he turned, he brought the highway's centerline with him, the painted stripe drawn across his chest like a sash. He had no eyes, just two smooth places where eyes are supposed to be, and I understood Red's warning. The urge to fill in that blank was tremendous. To imagine color, to give him the courtesy of pupils, to make him real enough to be permitted, and in doing so, give permission back. The CB went dead. The engine note lowered as if the air had thickened. My rig rolled slower, not because I braked, because the road wanted it. He stepped onto the frontage, one step, another. He moved like someone learning to walk by watching you do it, a clumsy mimic. When he reached the crown of the dip, the fog folded around him like a lover. I thought of the diner, the waitress's shrug. I thought of the rental car's lost driver, the lantern's impossible pulse, the marker sticks planted by hands that no longer bothered with metal. I felt my hands tighten on the wheel until bone protested. I did not look at where his eyes should be. I looked at the white what little there was, and I followed it. I put both palms on the horn. The sound tore out of me and out of the truck and into the night. And it was not a warning anymore. It was a dare. He tilted. He did not flinch. Figures like him don't need flinching. He took one more step. The salt under his foot made a sound like sandpaper across glass. I downshifted. The engine roared. The rig lurched. In the corner of my vision, the shapes at the edge of the flats leaned closer. I thought of the metal under the dash and slapped it now on the dashboard. The chain clicked. The little round saint seemed foolish and perfect. Higher, I told myself out loud. Higher ground. The words felt like someone else's in my mouth. I reached for the shoulder. No shoulder here. Just the faintest suggestion of a berm where wind had piled dust. I took it. The truck climbed a few inches. He stopped. He opened his mouth. No teeth, no tongue, just exposed road. The black inside him was asphalt. Not like it. It was it. My tires buzzed as if his breath were a stretch of highway passing beneath me at 70. He inhaled and I felt traction go soft, like the idea of movement had been subtracted from the world. Red, I said, not on the CB anymore, just into the cab, into the night. I'm sorry. In the mirror far behind, a shape broke from the fog, the green Peterbilt. It didn't have a driver. It didn't need one. It came up on the interstate and ran parallel with me, eating miles that weren't there. As it drew even across the fence of air between us, I saw my own reflection in its salt-scummed window, a wide-eyed thing gripping a wheel, a man forgetting the difference between water and land, speed and stillness. Keep to the white, I told myself again. I yanked the wheel and put the right tires farther up the berm. The left tires screamed on the edge of the frontage. The trailer groaned. Something slammed its weight against the doors from the inside. I didn't pack anything heavy enough to make that sound. He reached for the cab, not with a hand, with the shadow of a hand, with the absence of light in the shape of fingers. When it touched the hood, the paint bubbled, then peeled away in flakes that drifted like feathers and powdered desolate in the air. I floored it. The rig's engine leapt. For a second there was nothing, no traction, no forward, just the idea that this was where I would remain forever, the iron of me becoming a reef for the salt to grip. Then the right tires bit. Not much. Enough. The truck moved, a foot, 2, 10. The shadow of his hand skated away, leaving the hood dull and pitted as if I'd driven through a decade in a second. He didn't follow. He tilted his head, the way an animal does when it learns a new sound. A note passed through the night then, the first true sound from him besides that hungry inhale. It was the exact pitch my engine makes when the radiator fan kicks on. He was trying it on. He was learning my voice. I didn't look back again. The frontage bucked and smoothed. The fog thinned. The hissing salt quieted to a whisper I could place now. Thousands of tiny collisions of crystal on crystal, the world's smallest applause. My breath returned like I'd been underwater. After a mile, too, the CB popped and fizzed and spat the last of its ghosts. Good, Red said softly, and the word trembled. You're past him. I swallowed. My throat hurt like I'd swallowed a fistful of licorice salt. What can I do for you? He paused a long time. When he spoke, something like sadness crept around the consonants. If you get to Wendover, park on the east side. Leave your engine running a while. Face your hood toward the lake. If he uses your sound, maybe we can climb a little. Climb where? Doesn't matter, he said. Up. I drove. The sky in the east bruised toward morning, a line of tired purple above the sawtooths. The fog trailed behind me like a grudge, unwilling to admit I'd left. At the property line where someone had strung a fence, white crystals decorated the wire like Christmas, and I thought for a second about December truck stop lights and hot coffee and the ordinary days most lives are built from. My hands shook on the wheel and steadied. By the time the first casino sign for Wendover lit up the clouds from below, I had almost convinced myself it was a trick of fatigue. I parked where Red told me. East side, hood toward the lake. I let the engine idle too long, until heat ghosted off the hood into the cold. When I shut it down, the silence was like a vacuum. I listened for a long time to realize there was, indeed, something new in it. A faint, steady engine note that wasn't mine, borrowing my pitch, holding it. Climb, I whispered. Climb, you poor bastards. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe everything did. Out past the edge of the lot, over the low wash where weeds try and fail to grow, the fog bunched and sagged. Something like a line of trucks moved within it, not forward, not back, up, a foot, another, enough to feel new. I slept in the cab until noon and dreamed of tires turning without moving, of men whose voices rust when they stop talking, of a salt wind learning the sounds of us. When I woke, crystals had formed on the inside of my passenger window in a thin frost pattern that looked a lot like a gull in flight. My St. Christopher had fused to the dash, sunk in like a coin into a candle. I can tell you I left that day and made Reno and kept driving after. I can tell you I still run I-80, because that's what I do. Truckers go where maps say and where dispatch tells, and fear doesn't pay for fuel. I can tell you I kept the radio on and sometimes heard a voice I chose to call Red. I can even tell you that on some late nights, I park with my hood toward the lake and leave the engine running a little longer than I need to, in case anyone needs to climb. What I can't tell you is whether he's waiting for me specifically now, whether the black keeps tally the way salt keeps score on metal. The last time I crossed at night, I caught my reflection in a rest stop window, and my eyes looked wrong, too pale, too hungry for lines on the road. And as I pulled back onto the highway, tires humming, I swear, over the sound of my fan, over the hiss of wind around the cab, I could hear a second engine idling somewhere under mine, patient as tide, learning my voice, keeping to the black.